This is Jackie, and I am here with Trenton of Hands Like Houses. We are in a very chilly Baltimore soundstage, but we're hanging tough. Yeah,
It could be worse.
Absolutely. We last spoke on the red carpet, 2017 APMAs. A very frenetic, kind of like busy situation. This is way more laid back.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely more okay with this amount of people around.
A lot less yelling. That was a very crazy night. What do you think is like the biggest thing or event that has happened for Hands Like Houses since we last spoke? I can think of a couple of things, but what comes to mind for you?
I think obviously the WWE Super Showdown theme with Monster was probably one of the biggest, coolest things to have happened since. The rest I just got to think, like, I'll say that as my answer, but everything kind of blurs together a bit, so it's hard to remember what happens when.
I can only imagine. So how did you kind of link up with WWE?
To be honest, actually, Josh, one of the guys at Hopeless Records, his whole job is just basically servicing like streaming, playlists, radio, just promotional opportunities. And he happened to know the new music director at WWE and put it across his desk. And it was the first song that this new music director picked. And apparently it's the fastest they've ever chosen a song. So it was pretty exciting for us. We got an email. We were just waking up in Australia at that point because time zone differences. And it said, hey guys, just need to approve this if you're cool with it. First use is in like 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, whoa, yeah, sure, why not? We didn't really know what we were signing up for even. But yeah, we said, look, obviously, something cool. And then we just, as we kind of started seeing the ads go through and the number of people like tagging us on Twitter and Instagram and everything, and then just seeing the event, like how big of a deal it actually was, it kind of all sunk in kind of over the next few weeks of just like, wow, crap, this is a huge opportunity. So yeah.
WWE is huge. It's definitely international. Are you a wrestling fan? Do you have like a favorite wrestler, or are you just like you tune in and you're like, I want to hear my song played on TV and I want to see what they do with it, and it's amazing?
I have to say, not really a wrestling fan. That's not to say that I don't appreciate it or respect what it is, like, because it's obviously built a huge. I watched the TV show Glow, and I think it's given me more of an appreciation for. I think just, obviously it's a fictional narrative of just the way people are behind it, but I think it made you appreciate kind of what goes into it a bit more. And I think just seeing the scale and size of it, like it is an entertainment product, like it's not a sport. And I think for me, that's the biggest kind of, I guess, hesitation for me is like I'm very much a sport guy. But I think just once I separate from that, I can definitely appreciate it. And obviously when they've built up such a massive fan base of just the machine that it is, it's pretty wild to kind of look in from the outside and just see the way that even just us having a song involved with it, just the connections that made for us just kind of blows my mind as to how big the whole thing actually is.
Now, I am definitely, I'm not a fan that I tune in all the time, but I know that most wrestlers have like a finishing move. What would your like finisher be, or what would it be called? What would it involve? Would it just be like a drop the mic kind of moment? Would someone come in and like take care of business for you? I see. Mine would be the Jax attack because that's relative with my name, and it would just be something where like I throw an elbow and I walk away, and then like they fall down a couple of seconds later, like a delayed reaction, because WWE loves the drama from what I understand.
I don't know. Finishing move. Weirdly enough, this is probably a darker sort of answer, but my mind's going back to when I was bullied at school. If people tackled me, I'd always get them in a headlock and just drop backwards and smack their head into the ground because it was the only kind of thing I had before someone else was grabbing me and pulling me off them before I could swing a punch. So I feel like that would, maybe that's a little bit of a darker, more serious answer than I think I was really, maybe you were aiming for. But yeah, that was just my only way to kind of get one good hit in. It was that when they tackle me, just smack the head into the ground as hard as I can, and then by that point, I'm usually getting dragged up and thrown out of the way so that I can't swing a punch.
We'll call it Trenton's Revenge.
All right.
There's your finisher. So there's a lot more, not just WWE, that's gone on for Hands Like Houses since we last spoke. In October, you released your 4th studio album, Anon. How is it an evolution since like Groundsweller?
Significantly. I mean, obviously, from album 1 to album 4, we've always tried to kind of take my motto for producing different albums has been the best way to create the impression of a step forward is to take a step to the side first. And I think for us that's always been, we've always tried to make a different album each time so that we're not trying to recreate the same thing, because then it's always going to be better or worse. You know what I mean? Like there's only two ways about it. But if you create something different, then it's its own thing. I don't believe we have a best album we've made. It's just that we've made 4 great albums, each that we feel really confident in at its moment in time, and I'm proud of everything we've done. So it's the same with Anon. Like, Anon's different to dissonance. Dissonance is different to unimagine, and just by there's always like one step at a time, and I think that that's been the big thing. Like, you look at bands like Thrice and Bring Me the Horizon that have progressed quite significantly over their careers. It's only by taking those one. Sure, it might be a big step, but it's still only one step at a time. And there's pieces of the album before and the album after it in each step, and it kind of makes sense as part of a journey rather than just immediate point of comparison. I don't know. That's the way I like to think about it.
I like that. So with new music comes a focus on the charts. Would you rather have like tangible album sales, radio airplay, or streaming, or a combination of kind of that mesh?
Honestly, it is just the way that it all plays in. Because I was having a chat last night. We actually bumped into the guys from Memphis Mayfire. Just happened to be in the same car park as them, just outside of New York City last night. And we're talking with Jake about like first week numbers and how that streaming has kind of distorted the way that first week sales are reported, because it doesn't necessarily line up to the same amount, even though the money might be the same on the back end in terms of royalties and stuff. It's in terms of like chart positions, it's like you're competing with a very large casual user base who just put on whatever's popular in the biggest playlists, and so those get massively blown up. So it becomes the smaller charts that become more important. But at the end of the day, like, I don't really care as long as people are listening to our music and turning up to shows and buying merch and kind of supporting us in what we do. Then that's more significant for me than any particular number on a chart, because the charts just, it's all smaller charts and subcharts, and it's not always necessarily made up by how many people are actually listening to the song at a given moment. It's just it's indicative of that week. We got number 3 or 4 in Australia with first week with streaming and stuff behind some pretty significant artists. But if we'd released it 2 weeks earlier, there was no big releases coming out, so we might have been number one. Like, it's just it doesn't mean much in terms of our gauge of our success. For us, at the end of the day, we're playing on the other side of the planet from home, and there's hundreds of people here every night and singing along to every song we play, whether it's from this album, the last album, or the one before. Like, everyone's just belting out the same enthusiasm. So that for us is more significant. And I think just, the fact that we still have more opportunities coming, that's always the biggest measure of, success for us, is just what's next, what's coming.
What role does music streaming have in 2018 in music for you guys?
It's a big deal, because that's, it's an income stream that wasn't there through, I guess, the early part of our career with piracy and stuff being rampant. And, I think streaming's got a long way to go before it becomes the answer to, I guess, digital media. I think it can be monetized more effectively. But, like I said about the streaming numbers, like the massive artists are the ones that the free users tend to listen to more. And I think that the way that streaming services use their free tier dramatically distorts the numbers for bands like us that are kind of generate a lot of streams. Like, we're talking, millions and millions of streams, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the back end of it. So it's kind of, I would love to see a world where we don't, there isn't a free option aside from, your service particular singles, for example, promotionally or something like that. But, it's like, if it wasn't for streaming, the only income streams a band would be show tickets and merch, and that's it. And, everything else we do is all about just putting ourselves out into the world in the hope that someone likes it enough to kind of carry on to these other things and obviously end up here, at a show singing them along with us. And for us, that's the most rewarding part. But I think, in terms of trying to build a career, I think there's a lot of shifts that still can happen. Hell, I'm working on an app myself with a couple of friends, just the concept stage at the moment, but building it up into something that is, intuitive for both fans and bands to kind of interact directly in a way that's like mutually valuable. And, that's what I'd love to see happen. But at the end of the day, like, it's always going to move somewhere, and hopefully that's going to be a positive thing. The Music Modernisation Act just happened, and still don't exactly know how that's going to translate until we see our royalty checks in a couple of years, in a year or two, once it's fully enacted and filters through all the systems. Like, there's always a period of time after those things to kind of see what happens. But I think it'll all go in the right direction eventually. So.
Speaking of fans and performances, how do you go about choosing a set list now with 4 albums under your belt?
Honestly, our Spotify insights and analytics, because we found that Spotify, at least for us as the band, the analytics platform that they have is so in depth that we can kind of see what streams are the most. I'd love to see it broken down per city, per country, etc. But at the moment, we can still see what the most popular songs are, and that kind of helps us develop our set list. But we kind of take the main singles, any dark horse sort of popular ones like Division Symbols, for example, is still one of our highest streaming songs, partly because of the playlist it's on, but that one there is like a big deal for us, so we include that in there. And then we just throw in a couple of songs that we want to play just for ourselves, and quite often those are kind of the more, the deeper cuts, but at the end of the day, those ones have a different opportunity to kind of connect with fans, especially when, fans feel like, oh, well, I didn't expect them to play this song, this is sick, So, yeah.
So we're finally getting to the end of 2018. I think a lot of us are like,
That went quick.
it went quick, but we're also like, finally. Because I know, at least here in the States, it's been a rough 2018. And a lot of folks turn to music either to distract themselves or to escape from things. And what music do you find yourself turning to if you've had a rough day?
To be honest, I don't listen to as much music as I probably should, because I'm always kind of working around music. It tends to be more what I'm surrounded by. But I think I like throwing on things just when I feel like just switching off and putting some music on. I tend to put on, usually more aggressive sort of stuff. Like I like listening to stuff like Norma Jean and Converge and Parkway Drive and a few sort of things in that sort of vein, and just. I don't know, that I find like stuff that's a bit more intricate and a bit more like powerful. I think I like to listen to that. But there's times I've listened to just more like, I guess, ambient sort of things, like Me Without Using Your Record. I'm listening to that a lot. Thrice's new one. And then I tend to listen a lot. I have my own studio at home, and I've got a bunch of demos at the moment I'm sitting on for a couple of different bands I've been working with, and one band in particular from my hometown in Newcastle. I'm doing some work with them, a band called Introvert, and just been kind of listening over their demos and trying to figure out how to kind of restructure them and make them the best they can be. I mean, they're great songs to start with, so that's really exciting for me. So I tend to listen to that probably as much as finished songs that are already out in the world by other bands. Yeah.
I think certainly like heavier music brings about like a cathartic kind of response. When I talked to Maddie, in fact, last week when they played here, he was like, I don't really listen to music. I listen to podcasts. I'm like, that's not a bad option either. I mean, it's giving yourself some variety. 2019 is like just on the horizon. Can you make a prediction or things that are coming up for Hands Like Houses in 2019?
Yeah, we just announced Sonic Temple Festival, which is a mental lineup, like crazy big.
It's ridiculous.
The thing that scares me is we are going to be doing shows kind of linking up a couple of festivals, but I don't know if that means we're going to be in Columbus for all 3 days, so I'm really nervous that all the bands I want to see are going to be the other days, because there's a solid list. I'm sure I'll see a couple of the ones I want to see, but I think there's probably about 10, 11, 12 bands that I really would like to see, and statistically probably going to see 1 in 3. Foo Fighters, I think, is the one that I want to see the most, just because I've never seen them play before. They don't come to Australia too often, and when they have, I've been away on tour, or I was actually working a festival that they were on and was busy driving other bands around at the time. But yeah, I mean, it's such a good lineup. There's so many bands. I just really hope we get to stick around for at least one extra day.
I hope we get to talk to you again there. So stay tuned for much more from Hands Like Houses. This is Jackie. Thanks to Substream Magazine.